Hello, hello, hello. We'll give it a moment as participants join us here. Welcome to Application Limbo. As you are joining us, please go to the chat. Right now, your chat probably says 2 hosts and panelists. Courtney and I are busy people. Put it there in a group message, change it to everyone so everyone can see the questions and comments. And then while you're in there in the chat, go ahead and tell us where you're watching from and what you're here to learn, what your fear is. What's going on with you in applications? In the chat. Where are you? What's your big question or concern about applications?
Everybody's being shy. It always starts this way.
Yeah, we'll gently warm you up. I see.
There we go.
Someone's initials AA. Hi, let's see. Hi, Hawara. I'm joining from Austin, Texas. From Indiana, writing literally anything, right? A little bit of analysis of paralysis there, Abigail.
Yeah.
All right. Amber says hi from California. I see Becca, I see Delilah, Evelyn, Hamza, Joanne with an extra H maybe, Joanne. I hope, I don't know. I'm not being facetious. I just didn't know how to say it. Leanne, Mommy, Micah, Wendy, Yasmin, Z. How are you guys? Type in the chat. Tell us where you're watching. Tell us what you're thinking about for applications.
Yeah, I'd also like to know who's kind of in an active application or is looking to reapply and is maybe not hearing things or post interview. Like, where are you guys at?
Yeah.
That may kind of tailor some of the information that we're sharing if it's.
Definitely. Well, while you guys are typing that in, we'll do some introductions, then we can kind of see what's in the chat and assess it. So I am Rachel Grubbs. I am one of the MAPT co-founders. I'm a medical school headquarters advisor. I've been helping pre-meds in various capacities for about 20 years. I actually started in MCAT prep. And then the longer I was in test prep, the more I realized, I just want to help with the whole process. These kinds of events are my favorite. We want your questions. We want to help. So I'm super excited to have a really interactive session with you tonight. And with me is Courtney, who I'll let introduce herself.
Okay, so my name's Courtney Lewis. I'm one of the full-time advisors with MSHQ, housed under MAPT. Prior to this, so about a year and a half ago now, I was a director of admissions at a med school. Decided to join Ryan and Rachel and kind of get on the good guys team instead of turning everybody down, helping students figure out how to navigate this really complicated, time-sensitive, somewhat antiquated system of applying to med school where there's so much information, there's so many voices, and a lot of competition. So taking what I learned as a director and on some of my council positions and things like that and pulling it forward. And, you know, the three of us, along with Ryan and Rachel, have been really successful in helping students figure out how the heck to get their package to resonate with student or with AdComs and things like that. So that's who I am and kind of what I do.
Yeah, we're so glad you're here. So yeah, looking in the chat, I'm seeing people from all over the country and a lot of people who are reapplying, which is ostensibly what this is about. But it looks like also a fair amount of people who don't want to have to reapply. So even though, they're here to kind of, well, what can I learn in advance? And I love that. So yeah, it's a lot of people have to do a second cycle. There's no shame in it. I think the most important thing is if you're going to do it again, figure out why it didn't go right and don't reapply until you're sure you've fixed it. And that's what we're going to really teach you tonight. All right, let me turn on some screen share here. We've got a little deck for you. And then after that, we'll do lots and lots of interaction and Q&A. Can you guys see that big slide that says stuck in application limbo? Okay, yes. I get real itchy fingers, so I'm gonna try my darndest not to like take us to the next slide too early, but I mean, no promises. Med School Headquarters Advising Team, Courtney already talked about this briefly. There's a bunch of us. Ryan and I mostly focus on running the company these days and doing content, but the three wonderful people you see at the top, Courtney, Verenia, Dina, and also the fellow on the left and the bottom, Scott, all are taking on one-on-one advising students right now. So if you're interested in more help after tonight, there's a whole lot of us who can do it.
Yep.
And then topics for tonight. So when we're talking about application limbo, I think the most important thing is mindset, right? You've got to wrap your head around what's going on. We'll talk about timelines, kind of when you need to do what. And then we won't have time tonight to do an in-depth analysis of every single reapplicant. But what we're going to do is try to teach you what areas should I consider, what am I doing for my own analysis. And then, of course, after that, if you want more, we'll make sure, stay to the end, there's a coupon code coming. We'll make sure you've got the coupon code so that if you do want to get a little bit of one-on-one help, you can do that at a discount. So that's our plan. All right, take us through this one. What's this sign about?
So once it's kind of a hurry up and wait situation, as you guys are finding out if you're in an active cycle, right? You spend months preparing your primary application, you get secondaries turned in, and then potentially you interview, potentially you're still waiting on that. And this part is out of your control. And it's based on process, it's based on the amount of applicants they have, how many resources they have for evaluating, and a bunch of other kind of data-driven or resource-driven factors that you can't control. And so it can become very frustrating, but want to shed some light on kind of what the process looks like on the back end, what could be going on based off of what you're hearing back, the time in which you're hearing it back, and what to do during this period to be helpful, hopefully, in gaining an interview and or acceptance or preparing for next cycle.
Yeah. And, a lot of these slides are very student facing. So I think you just hit on a really important point. Former director of admissions of a med school, right? Until a year and a half ago, you were on the academic side of med school readiness, right? Not on the private side. So it's January. What are most med school admissions officers doing right now?
Hopefully, I mean, if I put on my director cap again, hopefully I've got the class at a pretty good place, maybe not completely full, but I essentially know I've had my biggest push of applications received. So I kind of know what's coming in for the cycle. I'm working on trying to solidify the class, use up the remaining interview timelines, and then get people to stick. And then I've got to turn my gears, and by February, have all of the meetings and get all the information I need to release for this next cycle so that, AAMC, ACOMAS, or TMDSAS, they don't really have a lot of changes, but AAMC and ACOMAS need to start putting out this next cycle's information for people who are going to be applying again. So, and promoting the cycle that's about to open. So I'm balancing a lot of things right now on the back end if I'm a director of admission.
Right. So students are thinking, I mean, isn't it her number one job to fill the class? Well, yeah, but also she's already thinking about filling next year, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of moving parts on the directors of admission side.
Yeah.
For me, the thing I always want to add on this slide, and it says right there in bright yellow, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. But a long time ago, someone said to, I don't know, it was probably Dr. Gray, but maybe me, said to one of us, hey, when should I start thinking about preparing my next application?
Yeah.
And we said, hey, if you don't have any interviews by Thanksgiving, we think that's a good rule of thumb to start analysis. Not because hope ends then, but because if you're going to apply to a special master's, they tend to open in October for the next fall, and first come, first serve. If you realize you need more clinical, you don't want to start more clinical in May when it's time to reapply. You want to start in November so you can get 6 months of clinical. So I've heard people say, well, I know about the Thanksgiving deadline. It's not a deadline. It's just a marker where we say, please keep hoping. And also, so if you've had no interviews at this point, we're a month and a half past Thanksgiving, I strongly encourage you to do some analysis. but not give up hope.
Yep.
All right. Next slide. All right. So no pre-med timeline is the same. Everyone's journey is different. My fun fact here that I always like to make sure people know is the AAMC each year does a survey of matriculating med ones. Now it's limited because it's AAMC, so it's MD schools only, no techs, no DO, or I guess no techs left, right? Because Baylor's no part TMS, yes. And then it's voluntary, but it's still a pretty big survey with a pretty big sample size. And every year for the last several years, the average age of a matriculant is creeping its way northward. And last year, so people who are in Med 2 right now, so people who did the Med 1 survey, 2 falls ago, 47% of them had taken 1 to 2 years between college and med school. So let's redefine what non-trad means. If you take a gap year or 2, or maybe even 3, you aren't necessarily non-traditional, right? That's just normal now.
Yep. It's the world, that's a competitive world we live in, trying to not because there's so many things you guys are having to balance and gain experience with and have these growth moments. It's incredibly challenging to do by junior year and not let anything slip, including your own mental health and physical health, right? And so, yes, more and more we're seeing later first time application dates or matriculants, just to give yourself a little bit more timing in pacing some of this stuff and giving yourself actual time to experience it, to grow, to get all of this done and do it in a really strategic and methodical way without having to condense everything down into 3 years.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Life experiences matter, wisdom and maturity matter. I'm not saying 22-year-olds don't have those things. I know 20-year-olds who are more mature than some 50-year-olds, but more time gives you more time to live. And I think there's sort of an outdated idea that, oh, it's impressive to be a young doctor. Patients don't necessarily feel that way. And nor do all med school admissions officers, right? Because again, people appreciate wisdom and maturity, and everyone gets that at different times, but generally, I mean, I'm generalizing, but typically as we get older, we get wiser. So it can feel like a long time to wait an extra year or 2. But in the grand scheme of things, when you're retiring, if you retire at 67 or 65, are you going to really care? It's just not going to matter at that point.
Yeah. I think that's where it would be nice if med schools either vocalize this a little bit better or had a grasp, because I sat in on so many national kind of council conversations with deans and things like that, where they're like, how do we judge resilience? How do we judge emotional maturity? And, how do we know if somebody has ever experienced something difficult or if they're just going to drop out as soon as this gets hard and things like that? And so sometimes life gives you those opportunities and you can talk about that in the application. And sometimes people come to us with perfect stats, or close to, but they're a little bit stunted with interpersonal skills or just opportunities to even interact with people who may be very different than themselves and things like that. And so that's why you see a lot of people not being quite as successful, even though you've worked very diligently and have done everything being asked of you to the highest level, but you're missing the point of why they're asking you to do it. And until you get that, your secondaries, your interviews, and their view of your preparedness will be off. So there's a lot kind of going on that they're looking for. So
that was so powerful. I want to make sure you guys heard what she said. So I'm going to say, I think, or at least try to paraphrase what I just heard. If you've done everything you think you're supposed to do, but you miss the point of why you do it, it's going to show up in your essays and interviews.
And they're going to say, this person needs more time to cook.
Yep.
Heard that phrasing a lot. Yep.
right? It's not ready yet. All right. So hopefully we've hammered that point home. Take a breath, maybe take an extra year. Just think about it. Okay, let's get into mindset. So we've already hit some of this.
Yeah.
So I think there's not, anything too new. We kind of maybe got a little ahead of ourselves. But what I really appreciate here is that we are kind of talking about performance, but performance, I think a lot of people quantify as stats.
Mm-hmm.
If I only have a 3.4, am I going to be okay if I have a 5.15 MCAT? That kind of thing. So one of the things we'll do tonight, and you'll see it in a few slides, is we're going to talk about quantitative assessment versus qualitative assessment.
A lot of people have the same stats that you do. There's thousands of you guys, so it is more so on these other things. So excited to talk about those other types of things if you're trying to wait it out or if you're looking to potentially reapply.
Yep. All right. So some quantitative areas. When did you submit your primary? I could go into like a 10-minute spiel about application deadlines, and I'm going to try real hard to do it in like 20 seconds. But basically, most of them open in May, some early May, some late May. And yes, most of them stay open through October, sometimes November, even January. But almost all schools do rolling applications, even if they don't do rolling admissions. So what I mean is some schools accept all cycle long, and some schools sort of wait and then do one big, really huge acceptance day. But either way, people who submit earlier are more likely to get considered earlier when there are more spots up for grabs. So that's pretty easy, right? If you're a reapplicant, go back and look at your verified AMCAS or a COMAS or Texas app. And, did you submit June 6th or did you submit August 26th?
Yep.
GPA and trends. What do you want to say about this?
GPA is something that we talk about every single day of our lives as advisors, as med school admissions, and everybody wants to know, is this good enough? Can I apply with this number? And it's dependent on what makes up that number, right? Am I looking at a 3.2 that's built off of A's and a handful of B's? Or am I looking at a 3.2 that is kind of on a downward trend? Because one, there's no risk really, it's just a lower number, but it's made up of pretty consistent performance. The other introduces risk. So the number is one thing, but what's more important to them from a risk assessment is going to be trends. Now, on the back end, if they're doing pre-screening or they're pooling people together and stuff, again, you guys, that is outside of your control. That's their process for review and things like that. But if they're opening your application, that's what they're actually going to be looking for. So unless they have something published where you do not meet a minimum, make them tell you no, right? After looking at things, there's always opportunity there. And it's, but if you're yo-yoing in your GPA still, that may introduce some risk, right? I'm going to look at your MCAT. I'm going to look at what else you had going on during that time. But, if you have a consistent upward trend, you're taking a lot of courses and you're working and balancing these other things, again, that mitigates risk because of the picture that I'm seeing. So it's a little bit more involved than just looking at a number, because that number can be very different things, very, very different things.
Right. It's a story about your sustained ability to handle academic rigor.
Yep.
Right. One semester of A's doesn't wipe clean. That's the great start of a great trend, but gotta keep on going.
And just like one C is not going to take you out of the game, right?
Yes.
One withdraw, one C, two C's, right? What's the story behind those C's? what other classes were you taking at the time, and what assumptions can we make? Because that's what an evaluator is tasked with. I need to put together this puzzle based off of data points and try to get a picture of what was going on when, and again, risk assessment. Is there any risk? Do we feel like they're a good fit and moving on? And we can talk about fit too. But yeah, these are kind of baseline things, but they're made up of deeper evaluations than just a sticker shock number.
Yeah, good point. So MCAT score, I feel like one of the most common questions I get is, if I get MCAT score X, will it make up for GPA Y? So let's start there. Does one supplement the other? Is it like do they even each other out?
Not really.
I know.
I mean,
That's why I asked.
I would say, again, to kind of give an example, maybe of a non-trad, right? 10 years ago, they had a terrible bachelor's. Doesn't matter how many A's they get now, they've taken 55 additional credit hours at a 3.9. They end up at that 3.3 mark, right? There's just not a lot of movement depending on how low their first degree is. But then they get a 515 MCAT. I would say in that regard, it lets me know what type of student they are now, and it shows that they are able to take information from their coursework and apply it in a standardized test format. So I would say in maybe a case like that, it could be very beneficial, because the opposite would be, either you're not able to take information that's in your coursework and apply it to a standardized test, or I'm going to think things have kind of lapsed, or, where are you taking this stuff, and things like that. So I would say be careful of your subsections, because be careful of the amount of times you take it, be very thoughtful when you're going to sit for it again, have some data behind it to kind of reference and things. But usually, no, it does not trump a gap in another area, but there could be some correlations, favorable ones or negative ones, depending on these other data points as reference.
Yeah. And that's why I asked, not, obviously I knew, but because students want to know.
Yeah.
What I often think about with MCAT, and again, speaking as someone who did MCAT prep for a long time, is it's the most competitive test that most of you will have taken at this point in your lives. Not everyone, there's always exceptions. But for many of you, it's going to be the hardest, most challenging exam. And yes, I'm talking about rigor and length, but I'm also talking about who else is taking the test. The MCAT is normed. I'm not going to get into the science. I'm not sure I could do justice to all the math, but basically it's curved in advance, right? So they kind of decide ahead of time, this is what the curve should look like this year. And so only about 10%, roughly about 10% of people are going to get a 515 or higher. And so when I talk to people who say like, well, I have a 3.4, but it doesn't reflect my abilities, and I'm sure I can get a 522 on the MCAT. Like, so you're not saying I'm a 98th percentile person, because honestly, most pre-meds are 98th percentile people compared to most of academia. What you're saying is, sitting in a room with nothing but other pre-meds, I think I'm 98th percent of them for this one specific skill of taking the MCAT, right? I'm not talking about all skills, all abilities. And to me, that seems like a bold statement, right? The MCAT is incredibly reading heavy. It's a lot of critical analysis. It's a lot of problem solving. I love this country. I've lived in other countries and I always come back to America, but we don't do a good job of teaching critical thinking in this country. And so what I find is that a lot of pre-meds are amazing at learning science out of books and videos, but have always treated humanities as blow off, and then are really just stymied by how hard the reading and problem solving is on the exam. So, respect it. Obviously, get the strongest score you can, right? Like, pick up all the points you can in every single part of your application. But it's not a magic fix, and it is just one thing that is curved against, other people who are just as competitive as you. All right. I don't know what the next slide is, so we'll find out together. Okay, so a little bit more on quantitative. This gets a little bit slippery because we're going to cover these activities again in qualitative. But what are the parts, Courtney, of activities that can be quantified?
For clinical hours, I've been doing sessions with people who are meeting with me because they're having to reapply, and they don't have any what a med school would consider clinical hours. They've done shadowing, potentially they've done some scribing, and they've been a hospital volunteer, and yet they have 0 clinical hours in the minds of the med school with really good stats. So anything is better than 0. So let's start there. Yes, you do need some hours. Now, I've seen everything from a junior in college who has a couple hundred in totality across all sections, all the way up to a person who is in the Army that's been a combat medic for 10 plus years, went back to school and things. So, I mean, 10,000 hours roundabout compared to a couple hundred. It's a very wide range. But again, what foundational knowledge did you learn from these experiences? What are you coming with? What moments of growth have you had and things like that? And that's how, right, you get into the qualitative. So you do need to have experiences in these areas above a 0 point number, but being strategic and really methodical about these things that you're pursuing can be really helpful, because there's also an element of qualitative on the back end, because a lot of people are going to be doing essentially the same types of things, but what you take away from it and how you write about it can be extremely different.
Yep. Yeah, and then secondaries turnaround time, I think personally that this is another area where, in trying to simplify answers for you, the collective pre-med community, sometimes like there's misinterpretation. So the med school headquarters has often said, try to have your secondaries back to a med school within 2 weeks. It's a rough guideline. The most important thing is, with each secondary you get, look at the due date, if there is a due date, because whatever that due date is, you got to honor it. And then a lot of schools don't have due dates, and it's just one data point, like I don't think turning in your secondaries on day 17 is like suddenly going to make and break all your applications. But what often happens, and so we say turnaround time, and I almost wonder if it should have been like planning time, is people frequently, and again, I'm generalizing, people frequently will spend January, February, March, April, and May on the primary application, which is personal statement, somewhere between, let's say, 15 and 30 activity essays, depending on, if it's AMCAS or COMAS or Texas. Maybe you did the other impactful, maybe you had to do an academic infraction or military or something. I'm still not even to 10. Well, yeah, I am, because of the, sorry, I counted essays as one. So I'm still like under 35, right? Versus you're probably going to have 100 to 150 secondaries. So I do think most people should start secondaries way sooner than they think. And part of what I actually recommend is not just starting them soon so you can turn them around quickly, but starting them soon because a lot of people get secondary fatigue and then just don't do them. And they'll say like, oh, once I looked at that secondary, I realized that school probably wasn't a fit for me. I'm like, you kind of wasted your primary money. And now if you reapply to that school later, you're a reapplicant. So just be mindful. Read those secondaries in the coming months, even if you're not writing them yet. Just read the ones that are on your maybe these schools list, just to see, because those are the only questions that the school actually gets to pick.
Yep.
So
They're incredibly important. They're incredibly important.
Yeah. Turnaround time matters, but it's almost like, what does that represent? Because I think when people have low turnaround time, it means they didn't understand secondaries work. Really,
well, and if you're just flinging them in, it's not going to bode well. Yeah. If they're super general, if they're not really addressing the question, you're just telling me a story that you wanted to tell me, and it's very kind of peripheral or tangential. I've got people who look like they've taken a lot of time to do it and will craft something for the school. So, but there's strategies to employ, which is what we talk about.
So again, these things are quantitative, but there's qualitative analysis under them. So start with turnaround time. And if it wasn't great, why? And wasn't great, to Courtney's point, might be too fast or too slow. Did you whip them out? Did you need the extra week? Okay. This part's getting fun. Okay, let's start doing qualitative analysis. So, can you talk to me about personal statement? Like, what's a, let's say you're having a reading day. You've read 30 personal statements so far today, and you have 20 more to go. And these are all lovely, bright, talented people who want to do good in the world. You know
Yep.
they're all worthy, but you're looking for the ones that stand out. What's the essay that you remember in a good way?
One that easily, one honestly with good reflection points, just because a lot of the times I would read personal statements and it would tell me a very fascinating story. And then at the end, they kind of tack on, and that's why I want to be a doctor. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why is this on your why medicine? Like, that's your reflection point. You're not doing anything to integrate yourself really into it. I don't know what it is about this story that you're trying to pull forward that you want me as the evaluator to know as your growth moment and why you included it on your journey. Like, what was it about it? It just seems like a nice story. But unless you integrate your reflection and talk about the impact, it's just a story. And so ones that give just an easy start point where I can understand where the journey started. And then there's these moments of, okay, so I'm pursuing this path. These are things that have helped either reinforce or help me grow or help me learn that this is the path that I want to be on. And then conclusion is, now that I know this is my path forward, here's aspirationally what I hope to be for patients and what I hope to accomplish through my career for other people.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's not about me section. It's not, and it's very few characters to condense sometimes a lifetime of preparation. But the ones that resonated the most and seemed less detached, less me centered, and less robotic were the ones where it was very clear to understand how that was such an impactful experience and how that could have built their foundation for understanding why they wanted to move forward with patient care kind of as a physician. I would say those stood out more.
Yeah, I love that response. And so I hope you guys are using your listening ears, you're using your critical thinking skills. Notice that Courtney did not say, tell me all about your research. Notice that Courtney did not say, tell me all about the doctor that inspired you. Courtney did not say, tell me all the reasons you are picking medicine now when you were a nurse before, or you thought you were going to be, a karate dojo owner, or I don't know, right?
Yeah.
That is, to me, one of the most common traps. The question is, why medicine? And I think we said most of the people in this room are reapplicants, but if there's someone who is a new applicant who hasn't done an AMCAS app before, you can create a free account at Mappd. You can see the word behind me there on my screen, mappd.com. So just say Mappd. Free software that helps you track your GPA, your activities, and also shows you all the different essay prompts from all of the three main applications, as well as links to the secondaries for med schools. I'm amazed how many people don't realize the personal statement prompt is why medicine. That's
Yep.
the question it's asking.
I know. Well, and I'd even sometimes get ones, the most uncomfortable ones to read, to be fully transparent, were the ones where you could tell that they were focusing on a certain core competency that they were trying to sell you on, how they developed it and how they emulate that. So uncomfortable to read. So weird and just like, ugh, this seems so disingenuous. It seems so crafted and it doesn't come across as sounding very service oriented at all. It sounds like you're trying to sell me on yourself. And I know some advisors out there do give that suggestion. I, I don't know where they're pulling that from. Never in a national dean or directors meeting have we been like, you know what we really want to read is that. We're always talking about passion, insight, impact, action, these service, right? It is certainly not those other things. We want to be able to glean that you have some of those core competencies, but writing to them is so uncomfortable to read, you guys. Don't do it.
100%. Yeah, and then activities, our note here is whole self versus pre-med self. I'm going to tell you guys a little story because it ends happy. So I'll start with the happy part. Someone who is now in Med 1, she's starting her second semester of Med 1 now, who worked with us a couple years ago in Application Academy. The first time she applied, she actually had already become a physician in her home country, and then moved to the States for love and realized this is life forever. And I really still want to be a physician. So I'm going to do the things I have to do it here. And of course, it's very, I think her home was, Russia. And it was a very different process to apply there. So she didn't realize she was supposed to put non-pre-med activities. So she had been a full-time nanny for like the first 10 years she'd been in the US, and had these like, glowing reviews from all these families whose children she took care of. Like, no, that's not clinical, but we learned so much about her when she talked about her job as a child caretaker. Like, there's so many amazing qualities. So she didn't have to say, I'm kind, I'm fun, I'm patient, I'm good with dealing with people who have different languages than me. She didn't have to tell me those things. She just told me about her job as a babysitter, and I was like, whoa, you're amazing. So don't discount your non-pre-med experience. And again, we've got a former director of admissions right here. So what do you want to add?
I have a couple people that come to mind where they weren't thorough in filling out their application, and sometimes they'd have connections to the schools. Sometimes, you would think that they would have been well informed, and they did not take the time to complete things as fully as they should, and they became discussion points and case studies for kind of the bad side of like, well, should have given a more global perspective, because only filling out the clinical is just not going to get you there. Just not. Yeah.
All right. More qualitative stuff. Let's go back to secondaries.
Yeah.
So I said these are the ones the schools get to pick, but you were part of that.
Oh yeah, I wrote them every year. And I'm one of the mean ones that changed them every year so that people would have to write a new one every year.
Right.
So, but I mean, this is something I've talked about with MD, DO, again, directors and deans at a national level very frequently. These matter because their board or their AdCom has come up with topics that they feel will be helpful in gleaning some of the information that they need to know prior to feeling comfortable accepting for an interview. And if you guys are not addressing the question at hand, that can be bad. If you are just flinging them right back in, you haven't proofread, and I'm like, who wrote the personal statement then? Because these secondary writing, responses are not the same person. That can be problematic. And I know some schools, they put a lot of prompts purposefully because they get a high volume of people that designate the school. And this is a very well-known school where I've talked to them, and they say they purposefully put a lot of prompts just to see who's actually really invested in getting reviewed. And so if you guys aren't really being thoughtful about these secondary answers, why waste the designation? It's, what's the point? Because this is the only school-specific things that they get, the only money that they get through the application cycle, and it's the point which can actually make you eligible to be considered for an interview. These are incredibly important responses, and so I would just make sure that you are buffering enough time and preparing yourself to really do well and give thoughtful answers to these questions, because primary application goes out to everybody and it's very general usually. The secondary prompts will be what they want to know and have some other purposes as well.
So we've kind of touched on this already. Essay review is here again, just as a kind of reminder for all essays, right? Your personal statement, your
It
activity,
matters.
any of your other primary essays, secondaries or supplementals, right? Whatever it is. Some of the essays are, I'm in the application and I answered a question and I said yes, and up pops a new essay and it's only 1,300 characters. So people think, oh, maybe this one's a blow off. They wouldn't ask if they didn't want a good answer. Right. So I see a lot of that. I see essay fatigue that results in uneven responses. And then to your point, not only does that make you doubt the quality, but I have absolutely had cases where I could tell the personal statement was very parent driven, and the secondaries maybe weren't. And, we're admissions officers usually have humanities backgrounds, right? And not always, but usually there are people who have degrees in education or communication or student affairs. So we're great readers and we read thousands of essays every year. So if you think, oh, but I'm pretty good at BSing, yeah, I'm pretty great at reading BS and knowing when it's BS. Like, don't think you're gonna. I mean, I'm not trying to like call people out and be like in a rude way. I'm just saying these people have seen a lot.
Yeah, and just a word for the wise here, people. Do not use ChatGPT. I know everybody wants to use it. They're at a national level. They are talking about how to catch people, and you will, if you get caught using that for your essays, they will not consider you for med school ever. You're going to be blacklisted. Do not do it. Do not do it. They have ways to catch you now. Don't do it. It will remove opportunities for you.
Cheating is really the worst thing a pre-med applicant could do.
Yes. Yes. It's like a felony. Don't do it. So
let's talk school.
I do want to mention something really quick, Rachel. Sorry. I saw a lot of people in the chat were talking about not knowing how to write as reapplicants. Like, do I just submit the same thing as far as my essays? I don't know how to rewrite them, having writer's block kind of in that area. And I do want to kind of address that because I think essays are potentially a big part of why you're not moving forward, depending on the feedback that you've been getting. If it's been kind of unanimous, there's only a couple of things that would give you kind of unanimous feedback. It's either in your confidential letters of recommendation, but I can only recall ever receiving one letter that was like, caution, don't accept this person. One in my whole career, so it's probably not that. Your activities or your personal statement, or maybe some problematic, issues like with the school list or, trends and things like that. But taking a look at your essays is going to be important if you're a reapplicant. There is probably something in there that at very minimum needs to be refreshed. You don't want to just fling it right back in. The definition of insanity, you're going to get the exact same outcome. So until you identify kind of what the issue is, really be some self-analysis and application analysis, and then at least refresh them. Don't turn it in. So reworking them, see if they identify what they need to, what the goal of having that section is, what the evaluator needs to know, what would be helpful as far as stories to kind of talk about what you're gaining or learning or the impact like we keep talking about and things like that. Because a lot of the times those are not on point. So
yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you kind of stopped us here to consider more, because you're right. This is obviously a hot topic in the chat. Micah had put a comment early at the beginning about I'm on my second cycle and I don't know how I can rewrite. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
where you are in your process, Micah, but what I have heard from many students who reapply is I go back to my essays a year later. Like if you haven't looked at them, we are getting wiser and better all the time, right? It's like one
Mm-hmm.
of the few perks of getting old, right? So you may surprise yourself if you go back to last year's to go, oh, I see a bunch of things I'd like to do differently now, or I have new experiences I want to add. So like if it's a fear thing, go check it out. Um, and then Abigail kind of came at this from the second place, which is like, I've stared at it so much. Now I feel like my old essays, I'm like stuck in those thoughts.
Yeah.
So again, there's no one right way, but I think in Abigail's case, she's already on the right track. She's saying, I almost feel like I should start fresh. Maybe you should, right? You
Mm-hmm.
said scrap everything, just save it, right? Save those files, put it somewhere in your Google Drive or whatever. And then, yeah, take a long walk or sit in a room with your favorite, caffeine or sparkling water or whatever, and just do a brain dump and see what comes out. Because yeah, in your case, you may need to start fresh if you're feeling like I have those sentences memorized now.
Or book a session and let one of us with fresh eyes come in and tell you, like,
Yeah.
this stuff needs to go. You need to rephrase this, you know, and make sure you're at least spinning your wheels in the right direction instead of the wrong direction. I mean, we do that day in and day out too, even if it's just for essays or even just personal statements. So we can do that if you want.
Yeah. Um, okay. So someone says, was it Huara? Huara. I wish I could pronounce your name correctly. I'm sorry. So do we always have to rewrite our personal statement, even if we have worked with an advisor on it? Always? No. What we're saying is if you used it last year and you didn't get in, you need to at least put it on the list of things that you are reviewing and
Mm-hmm.
considering.
Yep.
But maybe you have a perfect PS and your issue was your activities. I don't know. I haven't looked at your application.
Right. Yep.
Amber says, I'm not sure if this is the place, but I currently have Application Academy, but it will like to continue it. Yeah, it can be extended, Amber. You just need to email the Academy email address, and that service team will take care of you within a business day or two. But we have pauses and extensions, so I'll put
Mm-hmm.
their email. It's academy@medicalschoolhq.net, but I'll put that in the chat. So we can't help you tonight, but yes, you can absolutely get that help. Okay. Anything else on essay review?
Nope.
So school list I kind of hinted at before. I feel, and you talked about this about the way med schools are using secondaries as a weeding. People get fatigued because their school list is too big and too broad, and then they
Mm-hmm.
get overwhelmed by secondaries. But also, I've even had a few cases. One in particular comes to mind, a student last year that I hadn't advised. The first time I talked to him, he already had an acceptance, which sounds so weird. Like, I have an acceptance. Why do I need a pre-med advisor? Because he only got one acceptance. And he realized after his acceptance that he had planned to live at home an hour and a half away because he thought it was one of those schools where, yes, of course, there's mandatory stuff at the school, but like there'll also be a lot of at-home learning. But
Yeah.
that particular school wants you on campus at 6:45 for your 7 a.m. class. And he's not a morning person. So he was like, of course I want to go to med school, but I don't know how great of a learner I'm going to be if I'm having to get up every day at 5. And so his question at that point, because it was just in this weird situation of only having one acceptance, is what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
And if he had 3 acceptances, he could just say no, thank you to 2 and pick his favorite. But with one, if you say no to that, applying next year is not going to go well for you, right? You're going to look like a flight risk. So don't put yourself in a position. Oh, I was going to do double negative. I'm going to do it another way. I'm going to back up and say this again. When making school list, only include schools that you would genuinely be excited
Yep.
to go to.
Yep. That's another super, super common question day in and day out that we get. How do I build a school list? Beyond stats, like what else should I look for and stuff like that? And I think exactly. I always point people, well, look at the curriculum. If you're somebody who doesn't learn a lot from lectures and you do better at self-paced stuff, Maybe don't select a school that has mandatory lectures every day, because then you have to go to lectures and then self-study on your own, because that's not how you learn. Like, these are smart decisions, right? If they're not doing rotations, or they don't have electives or anything like that that are for areas that you are absolutely 100% positive that you want to go into, and that opportunity won't be available, maybe don't select that school then. Look at the mission of the school. Yes, they all seem similar. So what's on their social media? What are they bragging about themselves? What is their niche? What do they want their outcomes to be? Do you have any experience working with peripheral populations or in that region or kind of in that sphere? No. Are you going to be considered a good fit for the school? Potentially not. So let's address that issue, right? In these months leading up to it. I think school list, there's so much more beyond, if you fail a class, are you out, or do they have a buffer? Do they block you from sitting from the boards if you're not at a certain ranking in the school? Some schools do.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want that to happen, better start looking. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
There's a lot of other things.
Yeah. Yeah, and long term, just preview, and unfortunately for a lot of you, it won't happen your cycle, but if there's anyone who's a couple years out, long term, we hope to make our map school tool that robust. The MSAR and DO Explorer are already really wonderful data points, but they often focus on statistics. And the kind of one of the big philosophies that med school headquarters is trying to push forward is look at things that will satisfy the student experience as well as things that satisfy admissions requirements.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of students get so focused on will they let me in that they forget, and will I thrive? It's going to be so rigorous. You need to pick a place that's going to be right for you as a learner.
Yep. Because, drum roll, you get to do this all again if you get into med school. Applying for residency is exactly the same. You have to take your boards, you have to do community volunteer, you have to be involved in clubs and organizations, you have to do research, you have to get letters of recommendation from physicians that are in whatever field you want to go to, and then you go on audition rotations, and then there's interviews. So, surprise, it's all the same thing over again. But what every school does to help you feel like you're happy, healthy, thriving, you have support, you have what you need so that you can hustle to get that stuff done is going to be different. And each person's going to want something a little bit different. So yes, being thoughtful in your school list and not just shotgunning it and then going, actually, I don't want any of this. Well, maybe you took a bunch of time writing that secondary. You don't want to go there. You've spent a bunch of money, a bunch of time. It's offset some of the ones where you are a better fit and you actually end up liking better based off of their actual data and what they offer. It's just some hours spent researching can save you a lot of money, a lot of time, and potentially, like this other kid, a lot of heartache in trying to figure out what the heck to do. So yeah, I agree with doing this on the front end.
So important. So go assess now, right? We told you how to do it next year. Go look at your list. Did you pick 50 and only submit 30 secondaries? What'd you learn from that? Yeah, qualitative and quantitative here. All right, let's see what's next. We haven't done this deck in a while, so every slide is like a pleasant surprise. I'm like, oh, cool, we get to talk about this.
I know.
Oh, we're almost done. That's fine. You guys have lots of questions, so we have plenty of time to do more Q&A. So we'll do that here in just a moment. A couple quick announcements. So one is, it's very important to us that you know that we offer a lot of free and low-cost tools. So tonight's session, for example, is free. The pre-med playbook is not free, but you can get it on Kindle for like $8. And sometimes it's on sale for like $3, and that's not up to us, that's Amazon. So whatever they want. Applicationrenovation.com, it just takes you to YouTube. We have a YouTube series called Application Renovation where Dr. Gray does in-depth analysis of people who have applied and didn't get in. So that's another way to learn and see stories and kind of get help with analysis, especially if you're not ready to make the investment in something one-on-one. And then we do pre-med office hours. So, tonight was sort of lecture and Q&A. You're going to get a chance to ask questions, but we do an open question forum. I'm not going to say every Wednesday, but like 48 or 50
Basically.
Wednesdays. Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes we're sick, sometimes there's holidays, but basically Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, there's a couple of us on YouTube answering questions to anyone who wants. So check out those free and low cost resources, if nothing else. And then I'd also mentioned map.com as a free resource. Someone asked me for a referral code. I have to turn off screen share to look it up, so I will get it for you guys in a minute. Just hang on.
Yeah.
Once I turn off the slides, I'll be able to go play there. And then the big thing that I want to make sure you know, hey, look,
Oh, there's
her.
me. Hey, it's me. I didn't know that was in there. That's a funny picture of me at MapCon.
So it was, I don't know if you remember, it was so sunny on the days of MapCon.
Oh, yeah.
So almost every single picture with a window in the background, you get tons of glare and then you can't see the people. So I believe this picture was selected largely because we can see your face.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, and this candidate, I had done a bunch of mock interviews with her, and she got into her top choice school. She was super happy. So I was really glad that she was there and kind of still participating in things. She's a joy. I met her mom too. She's going to be an amazing physician. I'm super excited for her.
So we're doing something a little different. Often at these presentations, we talk to you about like a million different things we offer, and we do offer a million different things. But tonight, the theme is application renovation. So we've got a special discount code for you just for this offering. So if you want to sign up for either a 30 or a 60-minute session with us, it could be Courtney, it could be Dina, Verinia, any of the Med School HQ advisors. And when you go to sign up, you will be able to enter this code HOPE, right? Because remember the beginning, you're preparing to reapply, but you're still hoping to get in this cycle, right? That's why HOPE. So you can use that code, and it will, as soon as you apply the code, you'll see the discount apply. You're going to be able to see all the advisors who are currently available and see their days and times. So before you actually check out, you'll have your appointment. So it's a really handy way to book with us. And this is just the next 48 hours. So if you're looking for this sale, you need to go buy tonight or in the next couple days, because then the code will be gone. Okay. Do you offer an FAP discount for one-on-one sessions? Jenny, I love this question. I do not. I really respect where you're coming from this, because I care about equity. That's why the first slide was about free and low cost stuff. Here's the thing. One-on-one is very hard for us to discount because, I mean, to be candid, it's what pays the bills, but also Courtney is a very high value person whose time is of value, and it can be hard for me to discount that. Where we do offer fee assistance discounting is with Application Academy, our group advising. So definitely, and I love that, because then you get Courtney, but you also get Dina and Verinia and Ryan and Scott and me, right? You get all of us, and it meets 10 times a week. So no, it's not one-on-one, but it's an amazing value. So if you need fee assistance, I would look into Application Academy, because we've got fee assistance and we also have installment plans.
I gotta pay rent, guys. I'm sorry. We try to be affordable.
Jenny says, I did sign up for Application Academy. Oh, well then, Jenny, I
Yep.
can tell you another perk. You get a special one-on-one discount because you're in Academy. So go log
For one-on-one. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're already in Application Academy, there's a discount that's like evergreen for Academy students. So go log into your portal and check it out. And now 2 Academy people are saying they did not know. So they thank you, because I'll send an email reminder.
I met with somebody today with that 30-minute additional discounted one-on-one time, and we went over kind of what his strategy is. He wanted to know if that was sound, if he was thinking about approaching the MCAT and the application while working full time and stuff was the right thing to do. We went through all of that and made sure he was on point. So a lot of people will utilize that.
Yeah, cool. So I'll show this slide again before we sign off for the night, just to make sure you guys have the code. But for now, I'm going to turn off screen share so we can do more questions and answers, and also so I can multitask on the background and grab that mapped referral code for you all. So we're back to questions. Let's see. I don't know. Can we unmute Yeah, I think so. So you can type your question in the chat, or I think you can raise your hand. Yeah, and then we can allow you to talk, which honestly is often more fun for the audience. So if you're feeling up to it, we'd love for you to raise hands, and then we'll call on you in the order of the hands raised. Are we shy? Are we typing questions in chat? Jenny! Okay, I think you were first. Let me just check. Yeah, it looks like Jenny was first. I'm clicking allow to talk. So you should have a thing now where you can unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi. Can I ask about like anything in the reapplication process?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just kind of curious. I'm learning a little bit more through like the YouTube videos and through this program. And I'm a little bit afraid that I did the master's program, and I'm afraid that it's not too science-based. It's not I got a master's in medical nutrition, and I believe in the DO application, it did count them towards my science GPA, almost all of them. But I'm just kind of like nervous that it wasn't as strong as other programs, the choice.
So, I mean, from an evaluatory standpoint, I mean, I guess what would be the concern? Like, is it an MCAT score that you have that you're worried it didn't address, or a GPA issue, or what's what's the concern?
My
GPA?
science GPA, yeah, for undergrad, I had a dip on a semester. I mean, a year. It was a year that I dipped, and I was able to show that upward trend. And then my master's program, I did get a 4.0 in it with full-time job, but I don't know. I just kind of feel like through everything I'm reading that it's not very strong of a master's program.
But you got a 4.0 in it, and it's your most recent coursework. And so again, kind of, you won't know how much weight is placed on any number of things, but what you can control, you did control. You've got the 4.0 at a graduate level, and it is helpful to understand that, again, from a risk management assessment. That's what I'm looking for data points and things like that. Some schools may say, okay, well, but I don't know if she can handle 36 credit hours of heavy science, but not every school is going to think that based off of how you did at a graduate level. So it's just, if you feel like your application reflects who you are as a student now, and there's some distance behind things, and they have enough data to kind of assess that, then again, make them tell you no. What's done is done, right? Completed the master's, you did as well as you could, and if you can talk about why you chose to do it, if it's something that you were just interested in and you wanted to build your foundation in it, and it gave you good insight and information, then it's a positive. It's not a bad thing. So it's, I think, in how you frame it and going forward, thoughtfully and strategically, but you can't control how much weight they're going to give to any one thing. At least it's your most recent coursework and you did well.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's motivating to hear. Thank you so much.
I mean, that's how you kind of look at it, because it's just a lot of writing and data points. And so it's just trying to build that into a person and say, okay, because I guess bringing it down to an even colder perspective, like a more detached perspective for an admissions process. If somebody submits a primary and secondary application, and I'm looking at that and I'm evaluating, I'm not going to move anybody into the interview pile where, let's say they had a stellar interview but I wouldn't seat them based off of information that I have on their primary application and their secondary application. What would be the point of then progressing it forward? So that's where kind of the real triage happens. And so people are given a pretty good look at these things once you get to that point where you return the secondary and they're trying to figure out that stuff. And so having somebody in your application, what kind of picture are they going to get? How are you presenting yourself? Can you frame it in a way where these are all positives and there's been growth and there's been maturity, that, lessons learned over time and stuff like that? That's a much better way to approach it than saying, I promise I can do it, even though the data, maybe is not exactly what you're looking for. It's some of it is in how you shape, what you're saying and what your journey has been.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm working on now with
Yeah.
the program. Hopefully, like that's what I'm hoping to get. It's trying to put in my story and let them know who I am, not just by like my numbers, and painting a better picture of who I am.
Yep.
Okay.
There's all kinds of different numbers. There's all kinds. And, maybe some schools you won't make it as far as you hope, and maybe with others it's a really good fit and it's not problematic. So just only thing you can control is how you package it.
Okay.
So, and your timeline.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's always fascinating to me. This process is so rigorous. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that everyone has to learn about the pre-med process, but also this process is a lot about like, what philosophy, what mindset do I adopt to just be able to keep hopeful despite all this hard work and all of this waiting. And yeah, I think, Courtney, what you're getting at there, like Jenny did control all the things she could control. And, this phrase doesn't work for everyone, but at some point you let go and you let God, right? The universe has a say, the admissions officers have a say, and you don't know what it is. So, you can't do anything about that part.
I'm there each and every year. I had to let go of perfectly qualified individuals every single year, just because of a timing element or some type of nuance, or maybe more people ended up staying on my list than potentially anticipated, right? There is some level of fate in the universe with this process. And so you do what you can, and being methodical about that and giving yourself the best opportunity and being your own best advocate and kind of presenting this, it gives you then the best shot at having that work in your favor. But there's so much to it, but definitely doable. Don't rule yourself out if, as long as you're being methodical about stuff.
Definitely. And Jenny, thanks for going first. I know it can be really hard to break the ice with that. That was a great starter question. Matt Soldano, looks like you're up. I'm going to give you allow to talk, and then you can unmute when you're ready.
Hi, can you hear me?
Mhm.
So, as someone who became interested in becoming a doctor 2021, how do how do adcoms view virtual shadowing for someone who has had very hard times getting connections with actual, in-person doctors for in-person shadowing?
Sure. Honestly, at this point, they won't have much sympathy. And that's just being 100% transparent. I would say they won't discount what you did during that kind of time frame, and there's kind of provisions in place for that, but in-person stuff will always trump, and they will think that it's a hustle thing on your end if you're not getting it done. So there's just not a lot of sympathy there. Obviously, again, it's not talking about getting thousands of hours, but addressing it, in such a competitive application process, it at least needs to be addressed in some way.
Yeah.
Also, can you give advice for someone who's a graduate? Like, because so I graduated in 2022,
Mhm.
and so there a lot of the programs I've been able to find are for undergraduate students, and I have connections with the university, but every doctor I've talked to the university says that they're not allowed to do shadowing. So I'm kind of curious what type of advice you have for like, approaching private practice, or I just haven't had any luck so far.
Yeah.
I've been talking a lot, Rachel. You want to?
Well, Matt, I'm glad you asked it because I was going to chime in on that when you asked. So I'm glad that my instinct for follow-up was right where your brain was going to. It is really hard and it seems so unjust to me. So I second what Courtney said. At this point, they're going to say, I mean, I know we are in the throes of a big COVID moment right now, but they're going to say from like hospital closure and staffing standpoint that that part ended, right? That was 2020, maybe spring semester 2021.
Yep.
So there's not a lot of sympathy. That said, I get it. And to me, it seems wildly unjust that every single pre-med is expected to shadow, but every single doctor isn't expected to fit shadowing into their life to help grow the next
To pay it forward, to pay it back. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right. So if
100%.
somehow one day I get to the point where I'm in charge,
It's the HR. It's HR.
Yeah.
That's whose door we need to be walking on, because especially at hospitals, it's HR. They don't want to deal with it. They want to cover their butts, not introduce anything with volunteers or have to pay for people to be HIPAA certified and things like that. So, I mean, I think some physicians have good intentions, but.
Absolutely. So they're risk adverse. So what you have to do, Matt, is address those risks in advance. Courtney just said one of them. Are you HIPAA certified? If not, I think the Red Cross is still doing a free or low cost one. Don't quote me on it, but go Google Red Cross HIPAA certification. And then the next time someone says no because of HIPAA, you can say, I have my HIPAA certification.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that addresses one issue. The other thing is because of this current setup where I do think it should be improved, but we're just dealing with the reality of what it is now. This is like looking for a job. You got to put on thick skin and great shoes and knock on doors, right? You're going to get 40 no's before you get one yes. So just embrace that and start getting your answers. The other thing I'll say is these days, because it is so much harder to get volunteer clinical or shadowing, because hospitals and private practices are intentionally lowering staff count, you may have to go get your experiences through a paid job. So think about it this way. Instead of I need shadowing, think I need to go get a clinical job. And once I'm there and I've earned their trust and they love me, you know, it's 3 months or 4 months in, say, hey, I'm a pre-med and I want to do some shadowing. Can I come in on my days off and observe? And then it's going to be a lot easier for the doctor to say yes, because you already work there. You're already covered under their HR umbrella.
Yeah. And I think one clarification I do want to make is shadowing is something. Clinical, direct hands-on patient care is another thing.
Yes.
You need both, but they are separate. They are not mutually exclusive. So be very careful in having that delineation. So for finding direct hands-on patient care, sometimes it's hospital volunteer, but what are you doing? If you're just transporting a patient or you're working the front desk, that doesn't count. If you're a patient sitter where you're helping, adjust them in bed, get them things, you're doing activities with them, then that counts. You're providing direct hands-on patient care. So looking at things, I know hospice is generally a place where not always do they need certifications, and you can go and you can work there or volunteer there and get direct hands-on patient care experiences. Looking at kind of the county's low cost or community based, or even the Department of Health kind of based programs that they have. A lot of the times you can volunteer your time to do direct patient care or education and things like that there. You can be a care aide, through a service or something like that. But yes, a lot of them do require certifications like MA or EMT and things like that. Also, scribing, not direct clinical, hands-on patient care. It's observation. You're not interfacing with the patient. So be very careful with that.
Yep. So yeah, we know the question was about shadowing, but there's so much confusion about shadowing in clinical. We almost always talk about them.
Yeah, just understand that you need both.
And then Matt,
Okay,
as a
thank you so
follow-up-
much.
Oh, you're
Yep.
so welcome. I don't know if you saw, but in the chat, tons of people put, here's what I've been doing. Someone asked their daughter's pediatrician. Someone else just cold call a million places, but then once they got one, they asked that person to help them connect with the next
Yep.
doctor.
Absolutely.
Your colleagues should I shadow? Can you text them
Absolutely.
for me?
They all know each other.
Yeah. So yeah, go check out the chat because there's some robust expertise from your peers there. So that's cool.
Another thing is you can kind of, if you know schools that you're interested in, they probably have like alumni connections, or you can see if there's any like in the area and you're like, hey, I'm interested in this school. Maybe that's a little bit more enticing from an alum doctor than just cold calling and saying, hey, I'm a pre-med. But if you can tie it to something, maybe that incentivizes them a little bit more. There are state kind of run or regional run organizations that physicians are part of, where you can get in contact with that kind of main organization or council of physicians, right? You can contact them and see if they'd be willing, or who is part of that or membership. Rotary clubs are another good place to kind of fish for doctors who are connected to the community, and it's purely community volunteerism and connection based. That's another good resource, right? So there's all these kind of places, but yes, once you get a connection, if it's a good one, see who they know. A lot of it is based on just sheer hustle and putting yourself out there and being dependable, being really invested, because then they will want to help you. But getting a foot in the door, there's some suggestions, I think, for trying to do that.
And I mean, Matt did some diligence, right? It's just we're helping him see more. He was asking
Yep.
for some creativity. We gave it. But I think it's important to note what he said. He did try local
Yep.
schools and local hospitals. Often universities and hospitals are going to be the first place to say no.
Yep.
Because legal repercussions are so huge there.
Yep.
So cast that wide net, because yeah, if it's not at your school, there's still a million other places it could be. So that's great.
Yep.
Let's look. I'm going to ask help pronouncing your first name, but I've just allowed you to talk if you want to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hi, my name is Hara.
Hara. It's so much easier than I was making it.
I know they
Nice to meet you,
misspelled it
Hara.
at the hospital. But I just have a question. So I'm a current I applied the cycle. I'm waitlisted. My MCAT was a 507, and since graduation, so I just graduated 6 months ago or 7 months ago. I started working at an OBGYN clinic, and then right when I got like a month after getting my decision, I decided to quit my job. I think that might have not been a smart idea, but I just wanted to study for the MCAT full time, knowing that the 507 probably help. So I just want to ask, should I be looking for another job now, or is it fine to take like 3 or 2 months off just to study for the MCAT?
If we're talking months, it's probably okay.
Okay.
Just know that if you do end up needing to reapply, the completed hours and anticipated hours, there'll be a little bit of a deficit there, right? Because you're going to have to report a difference there. But I mean, as far as what they're tracking while you're on the wait list, probably not paying that close attention to it. They will see that you have an upcoming test date, though. If you're scheduled for it, that information gets filtered over. It's tied to your AAMC ID number. So just be aware that they will see that.
Is that a negative thing?
Potentially. They may want that information once you get it.
Okay.
and you have to report that. And so
to the school that I'm already on the wait list for, is that what you're saying basically?
yeah.
Because my plan was, I know I could do much better. It's just I believe in myself. I can do better if I take my time and study with a better strategies. I think hopefully I'll do better and send my score to them. That's not a problem. But when should I start my new job? Like, when should I start looking for a new job? My test date is in April. So I'm applying to the Texas schools and like other schools. So that would be like applying in May and June. So so I'm assuming you'd suggest for me to have a job by May, or is that too much of a break? Like from January to May?
That doesn't sound particularly problematic. Just know that, I mean, if you're going through training or onboarding and stuff like that, and you're getting it in April or May or late April, any hours that you count will just be anticipated hours, right? Because you probably wouldn't have like actually worked, but I wouldn't say it's incredibly problematic. And the reality is not everything can stay at 100 all of the time. And so if this is the most high yield area for you to address, great. And timing will matter and things like that. But, depending on, because you've got a wait list with a 507. Was it the 507 that kind of caused the rest of the responses you were getting, or was it something else? So there's maybe a little bit more to it than that, but if you're gonna take it again, you need to dedicate the time to make sure that it's going up and you have data from taking practice tests that would indicate that you are making those jumps if you're investing the time. But it doesn't seem particularly problematic, at least to me. Rachel, you may have a different view, and it's always good to get perspectives.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any shame in retaking the MCAT, especially when you have a 507. The only time it really bothers me is when people are already in the top 10 or top 5 percentile and are nitpicking for points. Right? Like,
it's probably something else.
Yeah, it's probably something else, right? If you have a 516, you are good enough to pass through. Let's at least look at their secondaries and consider them. I mean, see if the secondaries make it worthy for an interview. So that kind of score, like, one of my favorite facts for colleges is Harvard turns away more 1,600, or is it 2,400 now, more perfect SAT scores than they accept every year.
Absolutely.
Because everyone who applies to Harvard undergrad has great grades and great class rank, if class rank still happens at your school, and great SAT, ACT. So it just doesn't matter if you're a 519 or a 525 because you're an excellent test taker. With a 507, there's some room for improvement. But again, what I don't know, and I think this is what Courtney's getting at, is the 507 the weakest part of your application? Or are you saying I quit my clinical job and that was the only clinical I had, in which case I might worry more if you only have a month of clinical and then you quit? Or if you think it's clinical and then they read it and they go, that wasn't clinical, because sometimes students misclassify and you can put down whatever you want and then the med school will adjudicate. So actually you sound to me like a candidate for a deeper analysis, which is not a sales pitch. You can use the code HOPE and do more, but you may just want to go pour over your application more, watch some application renovations, make sure the 507 is the thing you need to fix. Because what if it's clinical that you need to fix?
Okay, and then for the application renovation, would that be like a one-on-one appointment that I would make, or would that be through a different process? Sorry, I'm not sure.
Yeah, you could do, so we use the term for two different things, so it's probably confusing. That's my bad. Tonight, and just for the next 2 days, we're offering a promo, and we've thrown a slide up and I put it in the chat too, so you can find it there. You can go to medicalschoolhq.net, go to advising, buy a single session, and when you're purchasing the single session with Courtney or Dean or whoever, apply that code HOPE and you'll get a discount. And in that session, you can do whatever you want. But what I'm guessing, and I've seen some enrollments already come in since we put up the code, what I'm guessing most of you want is, I want a half hour with Courtney or someone like her to pour over my application and see where my weakest areas are.
If there's any gaps and how to best utilize your time. Yeah.
So we'll do that for you privately. And that obviously is a big investment. Then separately on our YouTube channel, we have a series called Application Renovation. Those are the lucky few brave souls who got a session like that with Dr. Gray for free because they agreed to do it publicly. Right now it's redacted, so no one sees their address or anything. And that's not what I'm offering to you, Hara, because I don't think we're taking any right now. Or maybe we are, I don't know.
I think we are.
Oh, okay. So yeah, if you want to apply to be a guest on Application Renovation, you can. So your choices are pay for it in private or take the luck of the draw with however many applicants we have to be on the TV show, on the YouTube show.
I already got somebody scheduled with me.
I saw that. I saw one come
I
in.
love that.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I love it. So yeah, you'll see her soon.
Cool.
Thanks, Hara. That was a great question.
Thank you so much for answering it.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so it's 9:27. This is supposed to end at 9:30. So I'm gonna move us towards closing. I know that there are hands up we didn't get to. It's always the way it goes. We love you guys so much, and we love how engaged you are, and it does mean that sometimes we don't get to them all. Let's see. Wait, I'll try to take that one down. There we go. But yeah, I'll put the slide back up so you guys can see that promo code one more time. So let me go grab that. Oh, yeah, here's Mapped. I was just looking at Mapped just a second ago because someone was asking a question about it. And where's that deck? There you go. So if you want a private, you can buy, there's 30-minute and 60-minute sessions. It would be private, it would be one-on-one, it would be with a former director of admissions like Courtney or a former dean of pre-health advising. We have both on staff. They'll do an analysis of your application and talk to you about next steps. You can do anything you want in this session. So the code HOPE, we're not limiting what covers. So any one-on-one session you want to do with us, the code will work. So, use it liberally. You've only got 48 hours. Go take advantage. But yeah, if you want this kind of analysis that we did tonight, instead of generally, if you want it specific where we're looking at your mapped account or your verified application from last year, this is the chance to sign up and do that in one session privately.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll try to cover as much content and be, give you the context of why we're giving you the feedback and why it matters. We can provide that type of information because we can be really transparent based off of what we know. So we'll try to give you the most value out of that time that we can.
Right. Yeah, we do it a lot. So half hour doesn't sound like a lot, but it is enough because we do so many of these. And also that's part of why we say bring your verified application or your completed map profile, because if you sat down and tried to tell Courtney all the stuff in your application, good and bad, you'd eat 20 minutes of your 30 minutes just telling her your story. Yeah. But I mean,
I will say 60 minutes is a little bit easier. Yeah, sure. But yes, 30 minutes can be done.
Yeah, 30 minutes can be really hard to get to all the essays. Sometimes you have to sort of pick and choose which essays we look at.
Yeah.
Personal statement, probably, some activities, probably not going to get to all your secondaries, which doesn't mean they're not allowed, but it might mean doing your homework before the call. If there were a couple secondaries that really stumped you at the beginning of the session, tell Courtney, hey, I actually already know how I want to fix my personal statement. So yes, I want your feedback, but let's be sure to get to these two, like you get to help shape what we do in that time.
Yeah.
All right, friends.
Book them on the website. It's under MSHQ on their website under advising. And you can go to single session advisings, or you could get a package if you want to, but single session advising. And you could pick a 30-minute or a 60-minute, and then at the checkout, you just plug in HOPE because they're selling me off cheap for 48 hours, or Dina, or yeah. And I don't mean cheap to be, I know it costs a lot of money, but we will try to give you the most value that we can just to help you make informed decisions kind of going forward if that's within your your resources.
So
Okay, that was fun.
it was
I
fun.
like these.
Thank you. You were a great group, super engaged.
Yeah.
I have a lot of hope for all of you.
Yep.
Think hard, reflect hard, and you'll get there.
Yep. Continue to interface with us. We'll try to give you as much information as we can.
Absolutely. All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye.